Warning, this podcast contains explicit sexual language and should only be listened to at work if you're looking for an excuse to connect with your HR representative. Additionally, all mentions of the word women include cis and trans women. For my friends who are genderqueer, gender fluid, figuring it out, anything in between, and feel like this conversation is also important for you, you are welcome here.
Will you open up with me? These pages, they can feed your innermost desires. Do you feel inspired? Are you getting what you need? Are you coming curiously? A secret safe with me. And here you can simply be yourself. J Sweet Romance. Come on in, come on in, come on.
Hi, y'all. This is Jace, she, they, and you found Jace Reads Romance, a community dedicated to empowering women about sex and sexuality through the reading of romance novels. Holy fucking shitballs. It is 2025.
I know.
Where the fuck did the time go?
I don't know that. I wish I knew that because it just was like January. And then December.
So, for those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while, you might notice that this says season 2, even though there were more than 52 episodes in the first season. I decided to make my life easier and not have my seasons restart mid-November.
Smart.
So we have a really long first season of Jace Reads Romance, and now we are starting season 2, which is weird to think that we are starting season 2 of Jace Reads Romance. I'm a little concerned about that, but here we are.
Concerned. Why concerned?
I'm not concerned, but it just feels so crazy. Okay, this not concerned. I think the anxiety in me is like everything turns into concern, but just but it's
I feel
so
that.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's really crazy. It's so crazy.
So,
like
I
when
love
we
it.
did our anniversary episode back in October, I couldn't believe it then. I was like, we've been doing this for a year?
Yeah. We had, and at that point, I was like, wow, what a great time of reflection. And now I'm just excited to see what 2025 has to offer, which brings me to the actual topic of this episode, which has an intention behind it. It is goals and what I know. I have a plan. It's crazy.
Let's see how well we stick to that plan.
We're going to stick to this plan. We're going to stick to the plan. Poor Michael. But the plan is goals and things to look forward to in 2025. And then a little bit of a wrap up, my top 10 books of 2024. And I mean books loosely, because sometimes I just went the whole series. Just the whole series. And so yeah, because that's the way that this brain works. So 2024 was an incredible year. We'll talk about this more in the December wrap-up video as well. But just overall, I read 295 books in 2024, and I am so incredibly grateful for that. I know. Part of me goes, well, I could have hit 300. No, I couldn't have hit 300. 294 was incredible. I'm going to take it. I'm going to celebrate it. I'm going to enjoy all of that. And I probably will make a more written out version of my thoughts regarding all of the different things that I learned. But the picture of my year-end stats will be in this video, or these show notes, rather than the December wrap-up. Actually, if you are watching this on YouTube, you are probably seeing a little image with the stats up there, because Michael is decided he's gonna fuck with me, and I respect him for
Oh
that.
yeah, I got a text this morning right before we started. Can you
Yeah.
take notes of everything that's mentioned? Like,
Yes. Yep. Congratulations. Michael's decided that
he's going to be
that I need some
ambitious.
spice. I don't even think it's ambitious. I think he's correct in that as much as I
Okay.
think looking at my face is more interesting than looking at a blank image, not a blank image, but a still image on YouTube or on videos, things of that
Yeah.
nature. It is more exciting when you can see what we're referencing in a video medium, which
Yeah.
this might need to be
That's fair.
cut for our actual audio podcast. But you know what, y'all? Just letting you know all the things that are happening here at Jason's Romance. So 295 books. And this is actually, I have this thing where I'm not thrilled about this stat, and this is where I really want to focus in 2025, is of those 295 books, only 93 of them were physical books.
Wow.
I know. I did not realize how much more I read on my e-reader until this number. And I do know that some of those books were library books. So it means probably only about 80 books came off of my physical TBR last year.
Wow. That's still a pretty high number, but in the statistics.
In the scheme of all the
Yes.
books that are on my physical TBR, it's not great. And I do sometimes buy books that I read digitally in physical form.
Yeah.
So that does help. But they don't go on my physical TBR, they go on my red pile, which is
I was gonna say
over
they
there.
don't count towards that.
They don't
that
count.
Statistic.
They're
Yeah.
over there. They don't count toward that stat. And so goals for next year is to really focus on my physical TBR, the books that I physically own that I want to read. I would love for that to be over 100 next year. I'm not going to get crazy ambitious because I think 295 books is a lot. And for me, my goal setting needs to feel achievable. And I feel like shifting 7 books from digital to physical is an achievable goal for next year.
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
You read enough to shift 7 forms of whatever.
I think part of the problem is with a digital book, if I'm just not in the mood for it, I feel less guilt closing that book on an e-reader and opening up a different book if I'm in a different mood. But with a physical book, I feel like I'm truly betraying that physical book if I put it down and pick up a new one. And
I understand
so I need
that
to let
completely.
that go.
Yeah, I understand that completely. Because it's a thing. Like a physical book is a thing. And I feel like you get so much more enwrapped with the story and the characters when you have a physical book in your hand, because you're like, yeah, so I get it.
Yeah. But like there's a book that I'm currently in the middle of reading, and I had a bit of a revelation about it, and I'll probably talk about it in a different wrap-up video because this has been a hard book to get through. But I put it down for like a week, and I haven't touched another physical book.
Wow.
I have so many. But I feel like if I'm going to read a physical book, it should be that one. And so I haven't opened up any others. Can you tell that I'm an incredibly loyal human?
I'm the complete opposite. I think I'm reading 1, 2, 3, 4 physical books right now, all at the same time.
Okay.
Plus I am listening to an audiobook. With the guy I've been talking to for the last couple of months. He wanted to read the book with me. Which
You're going to have to tell me offline which book it is.
Hella cute. No, it's Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. It's not a romance novel. It's fantasy.
Oh, no, it isn't. He is fantasy. Brandon Sanderson is hardcore fantasy. Love that. Yeah. Okay, so back to some of my stats. Things that had to change over the year is I had to add in different categories for where I was getting my books, which was really interesting to me because at the beginning of this kind of journey of tracking, I had just overall books read and then the medium of the book. So physical, digital, audiobook. And I had 3 places where I was getting my books. It was my personal shelf, my library, or KU. And then I had to add an extra category because I started listening to ebooks on Spotify. I don't own those books. I'm renting them from
Yeah.
this. I'm using that service. I started getting ARCs from various sources, from authors, PR companies, NetGalley, and I had some friends give me books to read. So I borrowed these books. And so I have this general other category that I started, but I'm very interested. I think next year I'm going to track slightly differently, probably specifically ARCs in its own category. Though, even though I now own that ARC, the ARC is mine, it's not a finished book. It's not the finished book,
Yeah.
which is what I'm really noticing.
Yeah.
And then I had my, tell me.
I was just going to say, I would definitely agree with that. I think ARCs deserve their own category to be tracked in, just because they are kind of like a rough first draft, or like a movie that's being screened with a preview audience. I think that's a good way to put it.
Exactly. And there's a different vibe when you're reading an ARC because, number one, you're going to see errors. It hasn't gone through final edits. And so you can't judge these errors when they mess up a name or the punctuation. There was one ARC I read, loved the book, but however it got formatted, anytime there was an F and an L next to each other, it got split. If it was at the beginning of a word, in the middle of the word, like, it was hysterical. Like, but it was FL, not LF. Like, so like elf didn't, but it was so funny to me.
So like flower, if flower was in there, like there'd be F flower.
Separate. Yes. Yeah. It was so fun. And like, that's obviously not gonna, oh God, I hope not gonna be in the final copy of the book. And you just roll with it. There was a book that I read where they labeled someone's name, like clearly a character's name had been changed at some point, like a side character, not an important, not a main character, but they switched this side character's name from someone to someone. And you know what? You just got to let those go. It's is the pacing, how's the pacing is what I'm thinking about. Is the overall story good? Am I enjoying this experience? Versus you got to let go of those nitty gritty things that when you're reading a finished book.
Yeah. I think if you're reading a finished book, you can nitpick like that and pick out the punctuation and grammar and other things like that. But with an ARC, you do have to paint it with broader strokes. Like you just have to look at the, like you said, the overall story, how the pacing works, if it flows really well. But you can't just sit there and like nitpick, oh, the F isn't connected to the L here. That's so weird. I hate it.
Right?
You can't do that.
No, and I'm interested. I almost want to see some of these books because I've been getting ARCs since the end of the summer and some of them are coming out now in 2025. Are they going to be different than the book that I read several months ago?
Yeah.
Do I want to reread it or do I want to save that space for something else? I don't know. And then the last thing in terms of goals, I have my diversity goals for my reading. And this is, I've thought about this a lot. How do I want to keep going with these 2 categories? Do I want to, change things? But my diversity goals for 2024 were to have 33% of my books be written by an author of color. And 15% of my books contain a queer story. And I'll explain why I chose those 2 categories. So I think that authors of color are just underrepresented. Whether or not they're telling a story about a person of color, they just aren't. So an author like Amelie Howard, who is writing historical fiction with primarily white main characters. I want to read books by her because she herself is not a white person. And I want to make sure that we celebrate authors of color being in this space. I wondered if I should break down my authors of color further. Like, do I read more of this or that? And then I kind of got lost in the nitpicky. Like, like, not all authors put their identifiers on their websites. Or I am blah, 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 blah. Or it's just not, it's not the kind of nitpicky that I want to be. And so I'm keeping that category as broad, just authors of color. And I'm actually gonna up my percentage. So in
Okay.
2024, I had a goal of 33% and I hit it. I had 34.58% of my books written by authors of color.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was very proud of that. Now,
You
I
should
also
be.
know that this is not representative of the world. Like, the world has more people of color. I'm just, I know that for me, tracking is important and discovering new authors is important and all of that. So next year, 2025, oh my God, it's not even next year, it's this year.
It's this year.
2025. I am upping that percentage to 40.
Okay.
I want to aim for 40% of my books are written by an author of color.
Okay. Now, is that going to be overall for the year or monthly? Or both?
The goal is every month. It's both.
Okay.
So I track it every month. I want to hit those goals every month. So it's not just like, okay, I'll get my like huge goal in February. And no, fuck that.
Fuck that.
I try to hit these. I aim for these every single month. And I think I'm going to change the image I'm putting in the show notes. It's not just going to be the 2024 stats. I'll put a photo. It'll be a terrible photo because you have to fit all of these in it, of my stats for the full year. And you can see that before I started tracking, I didn't start actively tracking until midway through or early February is when I put the actual tracking in there. In terms of, and I've changed. It first was just on my master list, and then I made a spreadsheet that I will show you now of those stats. But you can see that for the first couple months, all the way until June, I was just not consistently hitting my goals. I even had August where I did not hit my author of color goal. I was only 30%, and then really was proactive at the end of the year to hit those goals. So it's really sad to fucking say that it takes a conscious effort, but the algorithm and the industry leans and skews white. And if you do nothing, that is what you'll consume and that's what you'll read. And that's not who I want to be.
Yeah.
So that is authors of color. And then for queer stories, and again, I say queer stories because authors don't owe me their sexuality. They don't owe that in their bio. And so I whatever story they're telling, and I try to be mindful, and I do search for authors who identify in the queer space telling queer stories. But it's just who's telling queer stories. And my goal was 15. I hit that with 18.64% of the whole year. Thank you. And that was the one that I did not hit at all for the longest of times. So that one was an adjustment for me. And I'll own that. But I'm going to up that to 20% in 2025. So the bigger jump is authors of color from 33 to 40, and then your stories 15 to 20%.
Yeah. No, I think those are good goals because it's going to make you do a little searching. Unfortunately, that's how it's going to be until
And
things
prioritizing.
get fixed. Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this, is I am, as much as it probably hurts my own chances with the algorithm, I
Right.
don't hop on trendy books as much
Right.
as others. And it's
Mhm.
because I think about, okay, is stopping what I'm reading to interrupt the programming to read, Quicksilver. Quicksilver is a book that I am sure I will love. I am sure I will love it. Haven't read it.
Yeah.
I have ordered a special edition of it because I love bad women books. Sorry, they can do no wrong.
Yes.
They made my shirt.
Mhm.
But it's not worth it to me to mess
Right.
with my reading goals.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Because like you said, the trend
Yeah.
skews towards white, straight, or white heterosexual romance.
Yep. Right.
And
white cis
so
het romance, even in fucking fantasy, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
And that is unfortunately become people's default in writing romance. Something that we've noticed as consumers, that unless you are very overt with someone's race, people are going to default white them in their brain.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's really true. And I'm not going to say it is what it is. Is it what I want there to be? No, not at all. But that's where we are. Let's get into the fun shit, though. So now that we've talked about all of the things that I'm going to do in 2025, and if you have authors of color, if you have stories of queer humans, and especially adult, I love a good YA, I do, but I am leaning toward adult in my life, in my reading. So if you have those, send me an email at jacereadsromance.com, put it in the comments, send me a DM on all of the social media fucking platforms that I have.
There are so many.
There are so many. And I actually just had to think, does Threads have direct message? What about Blue Sky? I don't know. I'm on
I
both
don't either.
of them. I have no idea.
I have no clue.
No idea. But these are my top 10 of 2024. Some of these are standalone books. Some of these are a whole series that just blew my socks off. In terms of how I came to this decision on making this list, y'all, it's pure vibes. Pure vibes.
I feel like that's how we just need to live our lives anymore. Just vibes.
Live our lives. It's just vibes. Top 10 of 2024. I am going to start off strong. Pride and Protest by Nikki Payne was one of my top reads of 2024. It is not a new book. It's not a book that came out in 2024. These are just books that I read in 2024.
Yes.
And I think, number one, I love Pride and Prejudice. There's enough basic white bitch in me that I love it. The 2005 movie with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden is just god tier. No
Chef's
notes.
Kiss.
You can't.
Perfect.
I don't want to know anything bad about it. If anything bad comes out about that movie, don't tell me. It'll break my poor heart.
I'm right there with you. I love that movie.
I got really sick my senior year of high school, so sick. And I watched that movie 7 times in a row.
I mean, it's the hand scene for me.
Hands.
It's just, there's so much said in that one fucking shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
His face. Dear God Almighty, I love him.
I love him.
He hated being Darcy. He hates being known for Darcy, which I
know
is so funny.
He does. He hates it so much.
So much. But what really hit me in this Pride and Protest, and I have read quite a few. Oh my gosh, how many Pride and Prejudice? So I read Most Ardently. I read Pride, which is an arc coming out soon. I read Pride and Protest. I read the one about Mary Bennett, In the Pursuit of Mary Bennett, which is a continuation of that. I read a short story in Relit. So I've read 5, at least 5 reimaginings of Pride and Prejudice this year.
Wow.
I know. And I thought my year was going to be all about Hades and Persephone. No, Lizzie Bennett. You
Lizzie
stole your way
Bennett.
into my heart. But I think the reason why this one is on the list is because of how Nikki Payne brought the pathos and the urgency of Pride and Prejudice, because it's in the historical time, there is urgency, there are consequences that are real in that story, and they don't exist in the modern age. It's not essential for you to get married. You're not a burden on your family.
Yeah.
Everyone is high class in those stories, so it's just a weird insular thing. But Nikki took that urgency and brought it into the modern age with actual class discrepancies, with a fight of housing and affordable housing, the racial aspect of both Lizzie and or Lisa and her family being Black, but also Dorsey. Yes, Dorsey. Again, so many fucking Pride and Prejudice retellings, being from the Philippines and not white himself, but being adopted into a white family. And so he's dealing with his own racism in this white upper echelon of life. It was so compelling. And also the way that they connected with each other. I'm not as eloquent as I thought I would be. We got to watch them build a friendship. They started texting, they dialogued, he respected her, she grew to respect him. It just hit in a way that, not that the other ones were bad, I'd say second was Most Ardently, which is a YA trans retelling. It's one of the remixed classic series. Great job. But this urgency was focused on the story of Pride and Prejudice, where Most Ardently really focused on like gender and gender expectations and all of those things through that lens. And it hit. It was so good. And I'm only mad at myself that I didn't read it before I met her at Steamy Lit. I had the books, I got them signed, but I hadn't read them yet. And I'm just mad that I hadn't done that yet. And so I think she's going to be at some of the signings I go to this year, and I can't wait to look her in the face and be like, amazing. Incredible.
I love that.
Thank you.
I love that.
And I have to read Sex, Lies, and Sensibility, which is the next one in that series.
Oh, and that's Sense and Sensibility, I'm assuming. Yeah. Which I love that story. So I think Sense and Sensibility is my second favorite Jane Austen story. But because Colonel Brandon.
Yes. Speaking of British people who can emote so well from like the barest of eye movements, Alan Rickman in that movie.
Fucking Rickman. Like
when he calls back to him and just says thank you, and he's like, oh no. And then his eye, like, it's almost imperceptible, but you just see him go from worried to like puppy dog.
I know.
And your heart melts.
I know.
Fucking love it.
I love it. So good.
Okay. Number 2 is a series. It is Artifacts of Oranos by Nisha J. Tooley. It is a tetralogy, as we discovered. You looked up that word for me. I hope that was the right one. I've been saying it a lot, so I really hope it's correct. And it is a fantasy series. It started with Trial of the Sun Queen, and then Rule of the Aurora King, Fate of the Sun King, Tale of the Heart Queen, which came out in November. I have read all 4 books this year.
Well done.
Thank you. They are not small. They are not small books. No. Trial of the Sun Queen, I inhaled, I think, in just over 24 hours. It really shook me in a way that I was so excited about, because
that's the mark of a brilliant book. Yeah.
Yeah. I just inhaled this book. It's one of the times where I highlighted very little in these books because I was just like, next page, next page.
You were just too engrossed.
What's coming.
Yeah.
Too engrossed. So the first book is, I'm going to ruin this, spoiler for everything. But the first book is a trials book. So this human, we are led to believe, is stolen from prison to compete in a bride trials for Faye as the only human. And so it's just chaos. She's
Of course.
she's dirty, she's malnourished, she has no fucking clue what's going on in the royal court of a different kingdom. And yet she like gets her flirt on with this prince, king dude, king. He's a king. And then at the end of that book, everything implodes. And she's stolen by a different kingdom's prince. And the second book is what the fuck? It's totally different. It's like, okay, that bride trial, it was almost like a side quest. And then we learn the actual quest. We learn who she is. We learn what's going on in the bigger kingdoms. We meet her actual love interest, who she only meets once in the first book.
Oh.
It's amazing. We've been getting his POV, but from his kingdom, but they only meet like once in the first book. And then the second book sets up like, okay, what the actual shit is going on. Third book creates even more chaos where they go fuck up that dude who stole her to be the bride trials. More complications happen. And then the fourth book, you'd think it was like, it's not gonna be so mean. Sidebar, I love and respect Lord of the Rings. But in that third fucking movie, if like, I haven't even read the books, but I'm talking about the movie specifically. Yeah. I saw it in theaters. I left and like took my time in the bathroom, went back in, and I swear to God, they were in the same place marching. It felt like it just took them 8 years to march from one place to the other. And that is not these books. They are sent in chaos. It's chaos in these side quests, in these other things that have to happen for them to achieve their goal. It was so good. It was so good. And the third book really, the first book was amazing. Everything explodes at the end. The second book ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. The third book ends on a horrible cliffhanger, but y'all don't have to wait anymore because all 4 books are out. Oh, did I mention that Nisha J. Tooley is an author of color, and so is Lore, our FMC, is a person of color? Yeah, thanks.
I love it. I love it.
I love it. It's so great. Like we get, people with brown, beautiful skin being described. Yeah. It's amazing. Awesome. She has another series, which I don't think is finished, so I might not start it, but it's a fantasy series that's more based in East Asian lore.
Ooh.
So I'm excited. I'm like lore mythology, not Lore the character from Artifacts of Darkness.
From this, yeah.
Yeah. So that was number 2. I'm gonna get this one out of the way so no one yells at me. Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This book just slays your heart. And I'm not mad that it took me so long to read it because I knew it was going to slay my heart. And I need to be in a very specific space to slay my heart.
Yeah.
Before I Let Go will rip your heart out. I cried so much. But it is one of the best written books I have read. But maybe of all time. And the relationships were so real. And these characters were so beautiful, and their story and their heartbreak is a 10 out of 10. I don't want to ruin things for you. It's if you don't know, it is about this couple, and when the book starts, they are already divorced. They have gone through a tragedy. They've gone through, it's been so long, you don't remember.
I don't remember. Like,
right? Hold on, let me get my copy so I can double check.
And sidebar for Michael, you can keep my video in with Tiger. Say hello, Tiger. This is the only way he'll calm down. As if I'm holding him.
Like just weeping. But like Yaz and Josiah, they are divorced, and it is about a year after the divorce was finalized, and they're kind of trying to not fix their relationship because the relationship ended, but kind of how do they move forward
Yeah.
from this tragedy, from this divorce as parents. Yaz has taken this year and found medication that worked for her depression. And just, I'm actually every single book on this list I have physical copies of. Maybe I should take pictures of them and show you all. But oh my God, it is two people healing in the
I
most
remember you
beautiful
saying
way.
that the first time around, how it's
Yeah.
very much about healing and moving forward from a tragedy, and how that works with a relationship, essentially.
Yeah. And there were moments in the story when I have no idea how this is a romance. Like, how do these people find their way to a happily ever after?
Yeah.
And Kennedy just masterful. There are two more in this series. I think it's called the Skyland series. Yes. And I just redid my entire bookshelf yesterday, live on TikTok. That was
Live
fun.
on TikTok.
But, oh my God. Yeah, that was fun. I'll post a video sped up of it. This Could Be Us is out. Also, look at these fucking covers. And then the third one comes out in May.
Okay.
I know. So I do have to read This Could Be Us before the next one comes out. So just like, bear with me when I cry, because I'm sure I'm going to cry.
You don't like to cry.
I don't like to cry.
No.
And I'm the kind of person, I'm like Kristen Bell when she talks about the sloth. Like, have you ever seen the Kristen Bell sloth video?
I have seen the Kristen Bell
where she's
video.
like, if I'm not between a 3 and a 6, I'm crying. Yes. If I'm too sad, angry, upset, crying. If I am too happy, crying. Many, many tears. I cry at commercials. Before I Let Go is just incredible. Okay. So the next one is the Meads Mishap series, and I feel like I'll have to restack them for y'all to see them properly.
I was like, I know what this series is.
This series like brought me life.
Mm-hmm.
It hit me in so hard in the best possible way of, I don't think I've ever read a fantasy book that was as fun, as interesting, as silly. It is written by Kimberly Lemming, a woman of color. These characters are women of color, and then monsters. So, they're all demons and monsters and things of that nature. And it's so fucking silly in some way, but you're still like, yeah, go save the world from the evil witch.
I feel like those are like the best comfort read books, because you're like,
oh,
it just settles in your bones and it makes you feel happy.
They're not even that long. So this book, I had never heard of it, and I found it on my libraries, like new books we acquired. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Read it from my library in hand. I bought it, immediately ordered this and the next 2 books. Immediately.
I remember.
I was like, well, these are mine. So let's just go with also these names are ridiculous. And her next book also has a ridiculous name. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, number 1. That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf. And That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human. And her next book is I was abducted by aliens and now I'm in a rom-com or something like that. We'll put the actual name in the show notes. But you better believe I pre-ordered that bitch.
Oh, of course you did.
Of course I did. Just every single book was awesome. They're interconnected. I'm actually really sad that there are only 3 of them. I love this world. I love the characters. I feel like there's so many opportunities for more in this world. And, maybe when I see her at Love Y'all, I'll just be like, please. I won't cry this time. I won't cry. Like, if you want to know, like, this, I cried when I met her. Again, 3 and 6.
3 and 6.
Crying.
Yep. 3 and
3 and
6.
6. Yeah, so I met her and I'm going to go axe throwing with her in February.
Okay, now I'm
so
jealous.
I'm not even sorry.
That was
I'm not even going to pretend
great
to be
face
sorry.
you just made at me.
Thank you. Okay. Let's just get this one out of the way. Lights Out. By Nevessa Allen. And as you know, I am not the most dark romance human. I'm not really a dark romance human. And I think that's why this book hit so hard. I made you listen to it, right?
I am currently listening to it. Like because I had to stop. I started listening to it at work. And I had
Can't do it.
It was a bad idea. So
terrible idea.
Yeah.
So this book, if you don't remember, this book is kind of inspired by mask cosplay on social media where dudes in masks cover themselves in blood and have knives and are really ripped. I hope finally that you have a video where you understand how little I get that. I respect it, but it is not within my realm of understanding.
In my defense, it's not the blood and the knives that gets me. It's the mask.
Cool. Like, it's fine. Again, like there's no kink shaming here. But I did not know that was a thing really until this book. So it's inspired by that. And it starts off so hard, dark romance. There's stalking, there's breaking and entering.
Very hard. Sorry.
He starts off so hard. It's not a happy book. He stalks her, he breaks into her apartment. She's an ER nurse. She has
which
the
as someone who
of
works in a hospital, the ER nurse is a job. Like
and a trauma ER nurse. It's in like a level 1 trauma.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of darkness. And then something happens like midway through the book and the whole fucking tone changes.
I haven't got there yet. So I'm looking forward to that shift.
And the whole tone changes and it's magical. It's just fucking magical. And I don't think I've ever in my life experienced a golden retriever stalker like Josh. And he's perfect. He's so perfect. And I know the next book in the series comes out coming in this year. Gosh, not next year, this year.
This year.
And I am optimistic about it. I'm optimistic.
Okay.
We're going to see. That's all we can do. I don't know. I know that the next story is about a character that you probably haven't met yet. It's about Junior. Probably haven't met Junior yet. Don't you worry about it. And who knows? Who knows? But it just was so unexpected. Like I went into it, I was like, okay, dark romance, mask, stalker. Oh, what? What?
Okay, now I may have to spend because I have it's my week off this week, so I may have to do some cleaning and listen to it, finish it.
You will not regret it at all.
Good.
Going back to a book that I'm sure this won't surprise you because of how I reacted when I read it. Oh, let me just get it. Let me get it.
Okay, get it.
Princess Trap by Talia Hibbert. So this is another one of those books that I grabbed from the library. Thank you, Chicago Public Library. Read it and went, you are mine. You're mine.
You're mine now.
You're mine. I bought the whole thing. And I think what surprised me about this, number one, I got it because look at this cover. Look at her face.
It's amazing.
It's so great. So it is about Cherry and Reuben. I never thought I would be attracted to a man named Reuben. I was wrong. I'll admit that. And they have this really adorable meet cute They go on kind of one date and then they get photographed by the paparazzi because, oh my gosh, he's a secret prince.
It's like a Hallmark movie.
Sorry. And then in order for, they have like an agreement with the paparazzi that they can't run stories about family, like the royal family. And so he goes, well, we have to be fake engaged. And that way they won't talk about you in the press. And so they get fake engaged. And they go off to his castle in his homeland. And you think it's going to be such a light, fluffy rom-com. And there is some really hard-hitting stuff in this book. There's child neglect. There is abuse of children and a partner. There is escaping that. There is outing someone and the consequences of that. Wow. There is some fun kink in this story as well. There is a lot of stuff about race comes up. He's from an island monarchy outside of Denmark. He's white, if you might not have noticed. And there's a ball. She's like, none of these people know how to do my hair or dress me or anything. They don't even have makeup in my shade. Oh, and he's like, wow. Fuck them. No. Like, do not, this is my fiance. You don't get to fuck with her. You don't get to try and make her something she's not. Right. And I love that. I love that moment where he's like, then get out, makeup artists and hairstylists, if you're trying to make her be anything other than what she is. And I fell in love with him so hard. So hard. He also, if you're a person who likes it when a guy comes just from eating a woman out, love him. Love him so much. Okay. Here is my thing about this next one. I loved the first two and I felt vaguely disappointed by the third book. So I'm just going to talk about my favorite book in this trilogy. Now, the trilogy is If Shakespeare Were an Auntie by Nisha Sharma. Overall, fantastic. Go read them. So Dating Dr. Dill was the first one. And then Marriage and Mosty is the third one. That was the one that I felt a little disappointed by. But tastes like...
We are professionals.
I am a professional something, that's for sure. Tastes like Shakar. I inhaled this book. So Dating Dr. Dill was a great, like, enemies to lovers. It's a retelling of Taming of the Shrew. Tastes like Shakar is, oh my gosh, which one was this? Much Ado About Nothing. That's right. Beatrice and Benedict, they fight like cats and dogs, but they love each other. And Dating Dr. Dill was like unexpectedly spicy. So good job. That car scene lives rent-free in my brain. Tastes Like Shakar, I think, hit me so hard because it was this, loathe to love situation. They are dealing with the wedding of the couple from Dating Dr. Dill. Their relationship is like beautifully complex and we watch them work together to have this wedding happen and get to know each other. And then also Bunty Likes Bondage.
That's right.
And it was done really well. Bunty Likes Bondage. And it was done really well. There was a lot of consent. There was conversation. He had an emergency scissors when they did that. Like, I just felt like the steam was great, but the conversation about the little bit of additional play in there was one that just kicked this up a notch for me in a way that makes it the top one. And
that's how it's supposed to go.
Opposite. Exactly. Oh. And it's the exact reason why this one didn't, because there were elements of like bratting or punishment. And I'm like, you don't get to just punish people.
I remember you talking about I remember you making the comparison between the two when you talked about them on a wrap up. So
yeah, and so I think I think maybe if they'd been switched, I wouldn't have been as mad, or maybe if I'd read it not after Smut Lovers talking about consent for several days, I wouldn't have been as turned off, but I was. The next two are two book club series, and I'm going to go in opposite order. So it is the new Camelot series, which if you haven't listened to those episodes, go listen to those episodes. They just came out at the end of 2024. American Queen, American Prince, American King, all by Sierra Simone. And wept. I fucking wept. I have talked so much about this series. I think this series was incredible. The pathos that I felt for these characters who were in terrible situations, making terrible choices and suffering, like truly suffering through it. I didn't enjoy that, but because I don't enjoy sad shit, but like they were so well written. It was so thought out. The spice was the kink was incredible. It was interwoven in a way that you rarely see in romance novels, where the kink and the relationships couldn't exist without the other. They are expressions of both. And it will destroy you and your heart and soul. And this is a true like book hangover experience of like, what do I do next with my life?
That's why it's on my list, but I'm avoiding it.
I avoided it too until Haley made me.
Until Haley made you, yes.
Highly recommended that happen. And y'all, like, if you really want to hear me talk about these with all the spoilers, go listen to the podcast episodes for that. And this one, Dark City Omega by Elizabeth Stevens. It was so good. So this is fantasy Omega verse with a Black FMC. And it was just, I loved so much about this book. And I read it twice this year. I read it in June, and then I read it again with Wiley for the podcast. And
that's right.
For the podcast, because you're here. And I don't regret it. Like, this is one of the few books that I reread and I loved. So sexy. I can show this, right? I can show this. Everything's covered. The cover art.
Covered.
It's so hot. It's so hot. And like, I almost don't want to read the second one because it's not them, and I love them so much.
I think that's the hardest part about a series that are standalones, you know, like a series of standalone stories, because you want to have the couple that you fell in love with, but you also want to read the author's stuff on other characters, but you fell in love with this couple for a reason.
I think for me, what also makes this a challenge is that I know that there's a bigger story. They have to go and fight the evil that is existing in this world. Yeah. And so there's a bigger story, but we're getting it from someone else's perspective. And I don't know what's happening with that, but only 2 are out. I also don't feel like a rush to read the second one because I think there's supposed to be 5, and maybe I'll just wait until all 5 are out.
Yeah.
Because remember we talked about it. There are only 2 out, but in this book, I have another one. Oh, it's so hot. All 5 of them. It's Dark City Omega, Shadowlands Omega, Fallen Omega, Gang Mountain Omega, and Glass Flats Omega are all listed in this book as probably going to happen someday. So
yeah.
And then the last, I'm going to go with series, even though I haven't read everything in the series yet, is the Jacksonville Rays series. Everything that I've read. So that includes That One Night, Pucking Around, Pucking Ever After Volume 1, Pucking Wild, and Pucking Ever After Volume 2. This is my favorite hockey series of all time.
Okay.
It just is. Emily Rath is the author. I don't know if I mentioned that, but she has created incredibly complex characters that are fun to watch, that have real shit happening. There is so much representation in these books. In the first couple books, I believe, in specifically queer. So the first, this is an MF novella, but Pucking Around is an MMFM story building a
Okay.
polycule. And then volume 1 is just their little snippets. The Pucking Ever Afters are just little snippets of their life. Pucking Wild is an MF novel, but the FMC is bisexual and incredibly adept at toys. And so there's a lot of like queer in her history and toy play. The third book, which I haven't read yet because it is an accidental pregnancy story, and I just am not in a place for that, is also I think it's an MMF novel and not MFM, if I recall. And then later in the series is going to be MM and then I think FF. So there's just a lot of queer representation in this, but I loved it. Like this Pucking Around is it wasn't my longest book. Oh, I thought it was longer. Maybe it was longer on my e-reader, but it is 573 pages. And I went, why no more? Why is it over?
Yeah.
And
considering how big the Heart of the Sun Queen was. Jeez.
Yeah. It's like book 6, an epic. The actual longest book that I read in 2024 was apparently Split or Swallow.
Ooh.
I'm mad about that.
How many pages is Spit or Swallow?
750 pages.
Why so
I've never
many?
seen it in real life. I could not tell you. It's having its moment. It's not bad, but like,
yeah,
she whines a lot.
Because of this podcast, I am more on Bookstagram and Book Talk than I used to be. So I see videos that have like snippets of the books, and I've seen snippets of that book. So yeah, and some of them are whiny parts. I'm like, ew, no.
Yeah, she's really whiny. And there's a lot of spice, and the plot is the spice. I can't even fault it for being full of spice, but it is vanilla
it's
spice.
A book called Spit or Swallow.
Split. No. Split. Like a snake tongue, because it's a basilisk.
That makes more sense. That makes much more sense. Split. See, this is what happens when you have damaged hearing.
Oh, it's also not, it's a pun on Spit or Swallow, which is a phrase we all know. It's fine. I'm not saying anything bad about it, but she's whiny. It's vanilla. It honestly wasn't anything that I hadn't seen before, which I think says a lot about me.
Well, it goes back to the whole thing, like 5 chili peppers for me may be like habaneros or ghost peppers for someone else.
It was very spicy because this is the conversation we had about Icebreaker. Like Icebreaker was spicy because it had a lot of spice written into it. Was it adventurous spice? No. Was it kinky spice? No. But there was a lot of spice. It's why I will rate a novella higher on the spice scale for the same number of pages compared to a novel, because percentage-wise, there's just more spice.
Yeah.
More spice. So there's a lot of spice. It was fine.
It was fine.
But I feel like that was such a downer to end on. Like, let's talk about the fact that the Jacksonville Rays series was some of the most fun that I've had reading spice in a while. And I actually, of books that I want to reread in 2025, Pucking Around is on my list. Like, I don't get to reread books a ton. I would love to reread Pucking Around, honestly. I feel like it would just be such a wonderful moment in my life to be able to read it again. Hopefully I'll be able to meet Emily Rath at a conference in October. So I've got some time and other things to get through. She just came out with an MM fantasy, but of course it's in hardcover, so I gotta wait.
Of course.
not buying hardcover book. And I love it. So those are my top. Those were like the ones that stuck with me throughout the year when I look back on the 295 books that I read. Let's just put that into perspective.
Oh man.
Yeah, these are the ones that when I looked at that list, I went, oh yeah, that one. And I hope that these are books that maybe you put on your TBR for this coming year. If you've read them and want to engage with me about it, send me a message, talk to me on socials, like and subscribe, which I don't think is this medium, but you know what? That's fine. I'm on too many. If you're watching this on YouTube, yes, like on YouTube, yes, like and subscribe. If you're listening to this as a podcast, just rate and review us because it helps.
Yes.
And as we head into season 2, that would be really great to get some more reviews up there.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot wait for what 2025 is about to bring. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. And I will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today, y'all. This has been a 3 Paws Productions podcast. Our producer is Sephi. Michael Achenbach is our patient editor. Our theme song is written and performed by Diana Weishauer. You can find show notes and so much more at jacereadsromance.com. That's JAYCE Reads Romance. Follow along on TikTok and Instagram at Jace Reads Romance. If you'd like to ask a question or share a story for the podcast, call and leave a message at 661-JACE-RR. That's 661-529-2377. Or send an email to jace@jacereadsromance.com. Finally, like and subscribe so you can get every episode when they drop. You can also leave us a review to help others find us. And remember, this is Jace holding space for you.